Welcome to another video from explainingcomputers.com. This time we're going to take a look at this, the VIM4 single board computer from Khadas. This is a powerful SBC with an octa-core ARM processor, 8GB of memory, an M.2 slot and even an HDMI input. So let's go and take a closer look. Right, let's open up this exciting little box. I think it just pulls if I can get in. There we are, come on, come on, come on. Oh, there we are, it is open and oh look, we've got a new single board computer and other things have fallen out in the process of opening it. We've got a little guide, a little card, and these look like Wi-Fi and Bluetooth antennas. But obviously our main thing we want to look at is the board itself. Let's get it out. I think we'll just tip it out. That's the easy way. And here we are, the VIM4 single board computer from Khadas. It's always great to hold in my fingers a brand new single board computer. And just to give you an idea of the size, we'll bring in a Raspberry Pi. And as you can see, it's about the same size physically as a Raspberry Pi, slightly smaller actually, but it clearly hasn't got a Raspberry Pi form factor. But this said, the VIM4 does have the same form factor as the previous VIM models, such as this VIM2. And with all the connectors in the same places, it means we can fit a VIM4 into previous VIM cases, such as this nice red one, which contains a VIM3, which is one of the best SBCs for running Android that I've ever reviewed. Oh, do note though, whilst you can put a VIM4 into one of these cases, the VIM4 has an extra connector, the HDMI input, very exciting, and so if you want to put the VIM4 into an existing case, you'll have to cut a little hole out if you want to access the HDMI in. Now, as we can see, this VIM4 comes with a fan and heatsink pre-installed, although the board can also be bought without a cooling solution. And talking of such, I personally purchased this VIM4 directly from the Khadas website, although it's also available from Amazon.com, where the price is currently $199.99 without the cooler, or $219.99 with the heatsink and fan included. This makes the VIM4 the most expensive ARM-based SBC I've ever reviewed, and so I do have very high expectations for this board's performance, as well as for the new software technology it includes. Do note that, in addition to the case, there are quite a lot of accessories available, as we can see here in the Khadas SBC section of the new Explaining Computers Amazon storefront. Right, I've now removed the cooler so we can take a closer look at the VIM4, at the heart of which is an Amlogic A311D2 system on a chip. This has 4 ARM Cortex-A73 cores clocked at up to 2.2 GHz, along with 4 ARM Cortex-A53 cores clocked at up to 2 GHz, and an ARM Mali G52 MP8 GPU clocked at up to 800 MHz. The VIM4 also has got 8GB of low-power 64-bit DDR4 RAM, and it's also got 32GB of eMMC 5.1 onboard flash storage. Also here on the top of the board there's an AP6275S wireless module, which for some reason has got a very strange fingerprint on it that I can't clean off even with solvents, but regardless, this offers 802.11 ABGN AC and AX Wi-Fi, as well as Bluetooth 5.1. And as we can see, there are connectors for external antenna. On the main lung edge, we find a Type A USB 2 port and then a USB-C port, which is used to power the board, although it also features USB 2 connectivity. There's then a full-size HDMI connector supporting 4K output at up to 60 frames a second, and then Gigabit Ethernet and Type A USB 3 port. On the first short edge, we then find reset, function and power switches, and flanking these a PNW fan header and a header for a real-time clock battery. Spinning 90 on the second lung edge, we next discover a 40-pin GPIO connector Down here, a digital microphone, and next to that, very exciting, our HDMI input. This is a micro HDMI connector that accepts an input of up to 4K at 60 frames a second. And finally, on the second short edge, we find a second digital microphone. We turn the board over, the excitement continues. For a start, on the top here we have a micro SD card slot. We've got a VIN connector, a voltage in connector that provides an alternative means of powering the board. And then lurking down here, tiny little thing, this is a KXTJ31057 tri-axis digital accelerometer, which can allow the VIM 4 to sense its orientation. Also on the base of the board, we have an M.2 slot. This will accept an NVMe SSD, but it also features USB 2, GPIO, and various other connectivity. The slot is outward facing, but an extender board is available to allow an M.2 SSD to be fitted under the VIM 4. Finally here we've got four connectors that take ribbon cables. The first two of these are CSI connectors, camera serial interface connectors for connecting a camera, and then we've got two more connectors to which you can connect a display. The first of these is a DSI connector, a display serial interface connector that also supports touch, so you can have a touch panel connected to this connector. And finally, this connector here is a V/1 connector, also for connecting a display. So there we are. This is the Khadas VIM 4, a very well specified ARM SBC, which I think now we need to put to the test. Right, I've now refitted the cooler, as you can see, and put the VIM 4 into this spare VIM case I had lying around. And this has included making a hole in the back of the case so we can access the HDMI in. If you don't want to use the HDMI in, you can get the board in without that hole, but I've made the hole there. It's quite a large hole because it has to accommodate not just a connector, but also a plug actually going into it, which would collide with the case if the hole wasn't bigger. So now what we need to do is to put the top on the case, and this is the top, and it goes on like this, but it's just worth pointing out the top doesn't go on absolutely perfectly. And the reason for that, I can show you if I just maybe swizz that board around and bring in another VIM. This is an earlier VIM, and hopefully you can see here that the cooler on the VIM 4 is significantly bigger than the cooler on the previous VIM models. And this means that when we put the top onto the older VIM models, it fits on absolutely flat, no problems at all. We do that onto the VIM 4, and you can probably see if I swizz it around, it is colliding with the edges of the cooler, and there's nothing you can do about that. So this top will go onto the VIM 4 using the standard case, but there will be a slight little gap at the edge because of that. Anyway, I'll now fit the screws. There we are, the screws have gone in, and we can clip on the cover over the GPIO connector. This is a very clever case. I can get that on there like that. There we are. And normally at this stage in the video, we now have to go to another computer and to download an operating system to put onto the SBC. But we don't have to do this here, and that isn't because there's an operating system pre-installed on the eMMC flash on the VIM 4, there isn't. But what the VIM 4 does have is some very clever embedded firmware called OOWOW. And this can be used to download and install an operating system, and indeed to back up an operating system. So this is an SBC we can set up without using another computer. So let's get things connected up and go across to its video output, and we'll turn on the power. And I can hear a fan just bursting into life for a second. And here we are running the OOWOW software, the wizard for making it easy to install any operating system. So we'll click on continue. There we are, and we can see it's picked up our Ethernet connection. Oh, well, it's gone straight across to allow us to install an image. And I'm going to pick Ubuntu 22.04 to start off. That seems a good idea, so we'll enter on that. And obviously download. And there we are, it's ready to install, so I'll obviously press enter to install. And there we are, it's finished. So I can now just press the enter key to reboot, and obviously Looks like reboot again. There we are. And this time it shouldn't go directly into the OOWOW utility because there's an operating system on the board. And if you heard a little noise then, it was the fan leaping into action for a second. And here we are ready to log in to Ubuntu 2204. I'll click on that. I think the default password is Khadas. Looks like it is. We should now arrive onto the desktop. I'll let this run through in real time so you can see exactly what's going on. And there we are. I'm very impressed with that. This is an SBC which has downloaded and installed and booted up its own operating system. Greetings. Here I am back again running Ubuntu on the Vim 4, which is a very responsive experience. Applications come up very rapidly indeed. Look at that for LibreOffice. This has to be the most responsive desktop I've ever run on an ARM-based single-board computer. We have here in this version of Ubuntu 2204 an applications menu. That's a bit unusual in Ubuntu, but it's nice to see that up there. Although we can also go into the standard applications view, where there's quite a few things pre-installed, as you can see here. If we just flick across to look at what's here on the board, various things just for the Vim, including a little fan setting application so we can set the speed of the fan. Nice to see they've done that. That's a bit of good attention to detail. And oh look, talking of which, the fan has just come on. The fan is quite loud when it comes on. I should make you aware of that. But let's now run up HTOP just to show us our processors on the system. We really have got our 8 processor cores, all doing a little bit of work at the moment. Not too much, but they're going on. And surprisingly, there wasn't a browser pre-installed on this system, but I have, without any issues at all, installed the Chromium browser. Here it is. And let's use this to do a bit of a YouTube playback. I'm sure you'll want to see that. And the thing to report here is that YouTube playback is very good indeed on the Vim 4. It isn't actually hardware accelerated. We don't seem to have proper GPU drivers for this board yet, but it doesn't seem to matter. We're not getting any drop frames up here. We're bound to get one when I move my mouse, aren't we? But basically, playing back 1080p video on this board works very well indeed. And the reason is because if we just flick back to the HTOP there, you can see all the cores are taking some of the strain. We've got HTOP running. It's still not dropping frames. We've got great YouTube playback. There's no doubt at all, if you want to have a small PC, an ARM-based SBC, which you use for things, including things like YouTube playback, and the Vim 4 performs very well indeed. I've also installed the Kdenlive video editor just to try and stress the board out. And this again, look at that, we've launched Kdenlive very, very rapidly. I've got a test edit over here, like that. It's actually a test edit I've used before, and it doesn't actually play terribly well on the timeline here because we don't have that GPU accelerated playback. But the reason I've loaded this in isn't actually to test out video editing per se on the Vim 4. I want to do a render test comparing Vim 4 performance with Raspberry Pi 4 performance. And so what we're going to do is to go to Project and we're going to go to Render, where we'll set up a script to render out this 40-second piece of video. And we'll bring up exactly the same configuration on a Raspberry Pi 4 8GB model running a 64-bit version of Raspberry Pi OS Bullseye. And we'll start both boards off doing the render at the same point in time. And there they go. It'll take a second, so we'll speed forward until something exciting happens. And here we are, the Vim 4 is finishing off the render. Its little fan is going wild right now, but it's finished the render in 1 minute 32 seconds. And I should point out that both boards here are rendering to an external SSD. And here we are, the Raspberry Pi is also completed in 2 minutes and 19 seconds. So clearly the Vim 4 has won in this rendering test as we expected it would. In terms of price performance ratio, the Pi is the winner, but when it comes to absolute performance, clearly here the winner here is the Vim 4. Final thing I'll just point out whilst we're here in Kdenlive is if we go to Settings and we go to Configure Kdenlive and we go to Capture, and sadly no device is presented here for recording from the HDMI input. And I've messed around quite a bit. I can't find any application which can see the HDMI input here in Ubuntu. And so what I'm now going to do is to try another operating system. Right, here we are booting up again and going into the firmware interface, and to boot into this firmware when the Vim 4 has got an operating system installed, on boot you hold down its function key and press reset. Anyway, here we are and I'll press continue, and what I want to do this time is to install Android as the operating system on the Vim 4. But before I do that, I want to back up Ubuntu to a microSD card, and so I'm going to cancel out of this screen right now. And here we can see the main OOWOW menu with the wizard, the ability to write an image to eMMC, dump an image from eMMC, which is what we're going to do here. Various configuration options are available, all that kind of stuff. There's lots of exciting stuff. What is Get Fun? We must have a look at that. What is Get Fun? Oh look, there are various games we can play. Got to try that out. It really is. In the firmware we can play Tetris. Well, that's extraordinary, isn't it? Or we could be here forever. But I think we'll come out of this, presumably press escape. It'll get us back. Yes, so we'll, that was fine, but we'll get on with backing up Ubuntu, where presumably I'll go back to a dump image from eMMC and enter. It's discovered the card I put in, so we'll just do a start. And there we are, it's completed, so we'll OK. And now I'll go back to the wizard, like that. And continue. And I'll just select refresh images list just to check we've got the most up-to-date stuff. It seems that we have. And we'll select Android like that to write it to the eMMC on the board. And as previously, we'll download. And it's downloading. And wouldn't it be great if more single-board computer manufacturers included firmware like this on their boards? This does seem to me a great innovation from Khadas. And there we are, we can now install the image. And there we are, we're ready to reboot. Oh look, this looks Android-like to me. It is, things are definitely happening. And here we are in Android on the Khadas Vim 4. And presumably I can flip that up and see what's available. Not a lot is pre-installed, but I'll have a look around and come back to you after this intertitle. Greetings! Here I am back again, and guess what? The situation here in Android on the Vim 4 is just as I said a few moments ago. There is very little pre-installed. I thought maybe I was missing something. I'm not. But we don't here have the Play Store, we don't have a browser, there is an app installer to install files, but we can't install from something like the Play Store, which is rather a shame. And I find this very surprising because, as I said earlier, the Vim 3 is a fantastic Android SBC. When I reviewed that board, it came with Android pre-installed, including the Play Store. I managed therefore very straightforwardly to install YouTube, which worked very well indeed. Fantastic YouTube playback on the Vim 3, which is a great Android SBC. And back here on the Vim 4, it's probably also a great Android SBC, but we do need the image to make that happen, and we don't have it available. And it's particularly disappointing because if we go into settings here, and we go to Khadas settings, and we go to HDMI in, there we are. Here I am talking to you in Android on the Vim 4, if you see what I mean. I can see it over here. This is me making the video. Here is the Vim 4 wire coming into it from the camera with obviously HDMI in. It works really well. So we've got a situation where we've got a pretty good Ubuntu image for this board, which can't see the HDMI at the moment, and we've got Android with very little available in it, but it's got HDMI in. There is such potential here with the Vim 4, but how many times on this channel have I ended a video by saying, well, this is a fantastic piece of hardware, we haven't got the software support yet. Sadly, that is the case in many respects for the Vim 4. And things may improve, I hope they improve, but they aren't quite there yet. Anyway, I might as well conclude the video talking to you here in Android on an SBC. That's the first for this channel. Why should I get myself standing in front of the green screen and shooting on that camera? I'll just do it like this. So now that is it for another video. If you've enjoyed what you've seen here, please press that like button. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. And I hope to talk to you again very soon.